No one could have imagined that Bryn Mercer, a 17-year-old girl with a radiant smile and a wine-red dress, would never make it back home. That fateful night, when she quietly arranged pillows under her blanket to mimic a sleeping figure and climbed out of her bedroom window. She had no idea her parents, who had just refused to let her attend the party, were still awake, worried, and checking her room, only to discover she was gone. They couldn't have known that their decision to drive out and search for their daughter in the middle of the night would lead them to a tragic encounter with a Jeep Wrangler driven by Kieran, the drunk teenager Bryn had just met at the party. The tragedy unfolded like a cruelly written play. 3 members of one family would die on the same night, on the same stretch of road, all because of one rebellious decision made by their only daughter. This isn't just a story about teenage defiance. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how a chain of wrong choices can take everything away in the blink of an eye. In the fall of 2014, in a small town called Pine Haven, Oregon, the Mercer household radiated the warmth of a welcoming home. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air, mingling with the soft sounds of alternative rock music echoing from the living room. But that afternoon, an invisible tension hung in the air. The usual comfort of home was disturbed, and it all began when Bryn, the 17-year-old daughter of the couple, entered the kitchen with a determined gleam in her eyes. She carried with her a spirit of decision, a spark that promised to challenge them. Bryn was eager to attend a party at Piper's house, her classmate from school, a celebration that promised to be the event of the year for the local youth. Bryn had already imagined the wine-red dress she would wear and the conversation she would have. However, when trying to persuade her parents, Laurel and Deacon Mercer, to let her go, she met unexpected resistance. "Mom, Dad, I've already made plans with everyone," Bryn began, trying to sound casual. "It's going to be a small party, just some people from school." Laurel, who was finishing cutting vegetables for dinner, looked at Deacon, who was reading on his tablet. They exchanged a silent glance, as if they already knew what the other was thinking. "Bryn dear, we understand that you want to have fun," said Laurel, with her calm, maternal voice. "But you know how we worry about your safety. This party, we're not comfortable with the idea." Bryn huffed, feeling irritation growing. She crossed her arms and looked directly at her father, hoping for an ally. "Dad, you say you trust me, so why can't you trust me now?" Deacon sighed and put his tablet aside. He had always been more lenient with Bryn, but knew that Laurel had valid reasons for her concern. "It's not about trust, sweetheart. It's that things have changed. Parties like this, without supervision, can be dangerous. It's not that we don't trust you, but rather the others who might be there." Bryn felt a lump in her throat. Her mind was racing with the injustice she felt. She watched her friends go to parties, enjoy life, while it seemed she was always left out, protected by an invisible dome that her parents had built around her. "This isn't fair," she exploded, her cheeks flushing with frustration. "You don't understand anything. Everyone will be there. I won't be the only idiot stuck at home." Laurel turned, placing her hands on Bryn's shoulders, trying to calm her. "Bryn, we know this is important to you, but sometimes as parents we need to make difficult choices to protect you. Please understand." But Bryn was beyond listening. With tears of anger in her eyes, she pulled away from her mother's touch and ran upstairs. The bedroom door slammed with a crash that echoed through the house, and she threw herself on the bed, sobbing with anger and disappointment. The muffled sound of her parents' discussion downstairs only fueled her fury and feeling of misunderstanding. She stayed there for a long time, eyes fixed on the ceiling, thoughts spinning. Finally, she wiped away her tears, determined. If her parents wouldn't let her go to the party, she would find a way to go anyway. Bryn knew she had to be careful, but the desire to attend the event was overwhelming. With her heart racing, she got up and opened the wardrobe, silently choosing the wine-red dress that always made her feel confident. She dressed carefully, adjusting her hair and applying light makeup while excitement and nervousness mixed in her chest. However, before completely venturing into the darkness, she remembered that her parents always had the habit of checking if she was sleeping peacefully before going to bed. Bryn knew that if her room was empty, her plans to escape would be quickly frustrated. Fraught with a combination of anxiety and adrenaline, she hurried to do something she had always seen in movies and stories. She gathered all the handmade artistic pillows she could find and began molding them under the covers. She created an improvised body, meticulously stacking the pillows to form a contour that in dim light could pass for a sleeping person. She adjusted the covers around the improvised form, carefully stretching them to align with the edges of the pillows, creating a convincing illusion. Each movement was made with precision, anxiety growing inside her with each minute. The soft illumination of the bedside lamp gave a golden glow to the scene, making the deception even more convincing. Bryn stepped back, evaluating her work with a critical eye. The pile of pillows looked, at first glance, like a sleeping human body. Even knowing it was a trick, she felt a strange relief seeing the bed occupied. It was a deception she hoped would work enough to give her an advantage in her escape. Deep down, she hoped her parents would see only what she wanted them to see, a daughter asleep and safe in her bed. Turning to the window, Bryn felt her heart beating hard against her chest. The moon was beginning to rise in the sky. She took a deep breath, the fresh air filling her lungs with courage and expectation. Carefully, to make no noise, she slid through the window and descended into the garden, her feet touching the grass lightly. With quick and silent steps, Bryn headed to Wren's house, her closest friend and accomplice in adventures. They had planned to go to Piper's party together, as Wren was also invited to the event that everyone was talking about. Each step took her further from her room and her fake bed. Each movement was a departure from the rules and an approach to the freedom she so longed for. Wren lived a few blocks away, in a small, cozy house in a working-class neighborhood. She followed a stone path that led to the back door. Bryn knew that Wren would be waiting for her, eager to share the excitement of the night. She felt a vibrant energy pulsing in the air around her, a feeling that this night would somehow mark a turning point in her life. Bryn could hardly wait to tell her friend how she had tricked her parents with the body of pillows, and with a mixture of pride and a touch of guilt, she imagined Wren's expression of surprise. Bryn quickened her pace, her heart beating even faster as she approached the meeting point. Already at Piper's party, Bryn and Wren felt enveloped by a whirlwind of sounds, lights, and people. The pulsating music, the glow of lights reflecting on glasses of local craft beer, the smell of cigarettes, and the atmosphere loaded with laughter and animated conversations. Piper, their classmate and the hostess, welcomed them warmly but soon had to leave to attend to other guests. Bryn's nerves were on edge, but the excitement she felt for being there finally overcame everything else. She tried to set aside the uncomfortable feeling of guilt for having disobeyed her parents, focusing on enjoying every moment in the middle of the room. While trying to familiarize herself with the environment, a figure stood out. Kieran appeared to be a bit older, with a confident air and an easy smile adorned by lovely dimples that attracted the gazes of many. His light brown hair was carefully tousled, and his dark eyes sparkled under the colored light. He held a half-empty glass, spinning it distractedly while observing the crowd. Bryn was with some friends when their eyes met. He approached with a confidence that Bryn found both attractive and a little intimidating. "Hey, you're Piper's friend, right?" asked Kieran with a voice that seemed to hide a constant smile. "I'm Kieran. I think I've seen you around." Bryn smiled, feeling a warmth rise in her face. There was something in the way he looked at her that made her feel special. "Yes, I'm Bryn. It's my first party like this, actually," she admitted, trying not to sound as nervous as she felt. Kieran laughed, a light and carefree sound that cut through the noise of the party. "Well, I'm a veteran, so I have the honor of welcoming you to the world of parties. Want something to drink?" He pointed to the table of drinks in the corner of the room. The two walked to the table and began talking about trivial things: school, mutual friends, music. Kieran had an unpretentious way of speaking that put her at ease. He seemed to know how to transform the mundane into something interesting, and Bryn felt attracted to his confidence. Throughout the night, she noticed that he had already drunk more than enough, including offering her drink several times. She was tempted to drink more, but the fear of her parents' reaction kept her cautious. She pretended to sip her drink while actually barely consuming any alcohol, not wanting to risk getting caught when she returned home. The signs were there with Kieran. The laughter louder than normal, the slightly more unstable steps, bumping into the wall for support. However, the attention he gave her was intoxicating, and Bryn felt she was finally experiencing something exciting, something that contrasted with the suffocating safety of her life at home. "Are you enjoying the party?" asked Kieran, leaning closer to be heard over the music. The smell of alcohol on his breath was unmistakable, but Bryn tried to ignore it. "Yes, it's being incredible," she responded, her genuine enthusiasm shining in her eyes. Kieran smiled, a conspiratorial smile as if he had a fun secret to share. "Look, this party here is good, but there's another one happening at my friend Rowan's house. What do you think about going there?" he asked, waving his empty glass in an expansive gesture. Bryn hesitated for an instant. The glow of the lights and the promise of something even more exciting than the party where they were seemed tempting. She wanted more excitement, more freedom, and Kieran, with his carefree and attractive manner, seemed to offer exactly that. "Sure, why not?" she responded, trying not to let her uncertainty show. After all, this night was about being bold, about doing what she would never normally do. As they left the house toward Kieran's car, Bryn felt a pang of fear. The excitement she had felt throughout the night now mixed with nervousness. The night, before inviting and full of promises, suddenly seemed full of uncertainties. Kieran's car, a 2003 Jeep Wrangler repainted in matte black, was parked a bit away under the trembling light of a street lamp. Bryn looked at Kieran and, feeling the tightness of anxiety in her chest, said, "I think I'll call Ren to go with us." But Kieran shook his head, frowning slightly. "It's better just the two of us, you know. It will be more fun." The concern of being alone with Kieran mixed with the reluctance to contradict him. He seemed so certain, so confident that it would be better this way. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the thoughts racing in her mind. "Okay then," she said, forcing a smile while trying to ignore the knot in her stomach. "Let's go, just us two." They continued walking, and Bryn felt a cold breeze of the early morning touch her face, mixed with the smell of damp asphalt and fallen leaves. Reaching the car, Kieran stumbled slightly as he reached the vehicle, a nervous laugh escaping his lips as he balanced himself. "Oops," he said, laughing at himself. "I think the party was too good for my legs." Bryn forced a smile, trying to hide the concern that now consumed her. She watched Kieran unlock the car with trembling hands and open the passenger door for her. The smile on his face seemed a bit tense, the confidence from the beginning of the night fading a little. Feeling hesitation take over her movements, Bryn entered the car, adjusting her dress as she sat. The interior of the vehicle was impregnated with the smell of alcohol and cigarettes, the worn leather seats and old accessories illuminated by the faint light of the dashboard. Bryn watched Kieran as he circled the car and sat at the wheel. He laughed again, trying to keep the mood light, and threw his arm around her shoulders. The touch, previously reassuring, now seemed heavy and uncomfortable. Kieran started the car with some difficulty, the engine coughing before finally coming to life as a folk indie song began to echo through the interior of the vehicle, the rumble vibrating through the chassis. Bryn's heart was beating fast as the car began to move. Kieran, apparently unconcerned with growing attention, left the parking lot with a sudden acceleration, burning the tires against the asphalt. The city lights flashed around them, reflecting in the windows and creating dancing shadows in the interior of the car. "Hey, slow down a bit," asked Bryn, trying to keep her voice calm while looking at the road. Kieran, with a mischievous smile, only accelerated more, completely ignoring her request. "Relax, Bryn, the night is ours," he said, laughing loudly as the car gained speed. "I knew you were fun," he said, squeezing her thigh lightly. Bryn smiled, trying to ignore the knot of nervousness forming in her stomach. At that moment, she just wanted to live the fantasy she had built in her mind, even though a small voice in her interior told her that things could get out of control. And so, as Kieran's car disappeared into the night, Bryn left behind the safety of everything she knew, launching herself into an experience that would change her life forever. "Kieran, please, slow down. Please, go slower," she pleaded, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and urgency. But Kieran was in another world where adrenaline and alcohol mixed in a dangerous dance. He laughed again, pressing Bryn's arm against him, as if it were a guarantee that everything was fine. "Relax, Bryn. I know what I'm doing. Just enjoy the ride," he said, his eyes fixed on the road, but his trembling hand on the wheel betraying the confidence his voice tried to project. Bryn gripped the seat, only then deciding to put on the seatbelt. She asked Kieran to do the same, but he refused, saying it was nonsense. His gaze fixed on the road ahead, where the lights of the posts passed too quickly, creating ghostly shadows on the asphalt. The speed increased, and the silence of the city seemed to transform into a scream of alert that only she could hear. Suddenly, a strong light invaded Bryn's field of vision, a headlight from a car that seemed to emerge from nowhere. She felt the impact before even realizing what was happening. The impact was brutal, a deafening crash of twisted metal. The glass shattered in a spray of shining fragments that danced in the air. The car spun out of control, and Bryn saw with horror Kieran being thrown through the windshield, his body being launched like a helpless doll against the devastating force of the collision. Around her, everything fragmented into a whirlwind of pain and confusion, a chaotic situation of sounds and sensations that seemed to have no end. And then the world went out, leaving Bryn adrift in a sea of darkness, where the sound of the engine disappeared, and the blinding lights became just a distant echo of her last and disastrous act of trust. When she opened her eyes again, the darkness gave way to a blinding white. Bryn blinked several times, trying to focus her vision on something, anything. The ceiling of the hospital appeared above her, sterile and intimidating. The smell of disinfectant burned in her nostrils, and the sound of machines monitoring her vital signs invaded her ears. An unbearable pain radiated throughout her body, but especially in her arms and legs. Bryn tried to move them, but the effort was in vain. A growing panic took hold of her when she realized she couldn't move anything. It was as if her body was disconnected from her mind, a dead weight that she could no longer command. She tried to turn her head, but even that seemed a monumental task. Her eyes scanned the room in search of something familiar, something that could bring comfort. Instead, she found the face of a nurse who approached slowly, her eyes gentle but somber. Where am I?" murmured Bryn, her voice coming out hoarse, as if not used for a long time. The nurse, a middle-aged woman with her hair tied in a tight bun, looked at Bryn with an expression of grief. She adjusted the sheets around the young woman, trying to offer some consolation with her gentle touch. "You're in the hospital, dear," said the nurse with a low and reassuring voice. "You suffered a car accident. It was very serious, but you're in good hands now." Bryn blinked, trying to process the words. Car accident. The words seemed disconnected from the reality she knew, a nightmare she couldn't reconcile with the last memory she had of Kieran's car, of the party, of the promise of a night of freedom. "I can't move. I'm so cold," said Bryn, trembling a lot. The panic in her voice was palpable, each word loaded with a growing tide of despair. The nurse sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. She took Bryn's hand, a connection that seemed both comforting and overwhelming. "The impact was very strong, Bryn. You underwent surgeries because you had many broken and exposed bones. Your arms and your legs, well, you suffered fractures in your spine. We still don't know the complete extent, but you lost a lot of blood." Before she could finish, the words broke into sobs as reality infiltrated her mind like a relentless wave. Tears burned her eyes, running down her face, and the pain in her chest grew, overwhelming. The memories returned like a whirlwind. The car, the headlights, the impact. Bryn felt submerged in a mixture of physical and emotional pain that seemed impossible to bear. The nurse only trying to offer a comfort she knew was insufficient. "I know it's difficult, dear, but we're here to help you overcome this. We'll take care of you. Everything that can be done will be done." But the nurse's words dissipated in the air. She closed her eyes, trying to escape the overwhelming reality. Bryn struggled to cling to the fragile reality around her. The voices and sounds of the hospital seemed to blend into a distant blur. The pain in her body was a constant, a cruel reminder of the fragility of her condition. Her chest hurt with each breath, but the emotional pain, an oppressive shadow that squeezed her heart, was even worse. The memory of Kieran pierced her consciousness, and she turned her head with difficulty to look at the nurse at her side. "And Kieran?" Her voice was broken, each word an effort. "The boy who was with me in the car? How is he?" The nurse paused, her expression hardening with a mixture of sadness and compassion. She squeezed Bryn's hand lightly as if seeking courage in the contact. He didn't resist. He didn't survive, dear. Kieran died on impact. When help arrived, it was already too late for him." The nurse's voice was soft, but the news hit Bryn with the force of a physical blow. Bryn's breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to spin around her, a spiral of horror that sank her into an abyss of guilt. Her eyes filled with tears that slid silently down her face. Each tear seemed a piece of her soul breaking apart, each drop a painful memory of what she had lost. And the others?" Bryn's voice was a whisper, a broken murmur of desperation. "The people in the other car?" The nurse closed her eyes for a moment, as if wishing she could give a different answer. When she opened them again, her eyes were full of an unfathomable sadness. "They also died, Bryn. The occupants of the other car didn't survive the accident." Words like stones that were thrown at Bryn, sinking her even more into pain and remorse. Bryn began to cry, a deep and uncontrollable cry, her body trembling under the weight of guilt. Each sob seemed to tear her soul, as if the very act of breathing were an unbearable punishment. She felt a despair so deep that it seemed impossible to escape, a darkness that extended endlessly within her. She knew with devastating certainty that her own death was not far off. The physical suffering was relentless, but it was the emotional pain that destroyed her from the inside out. The memory of Kieran's smile, the party lights, the promise of a night of freedom was now a bitter memory that corroded her. The nurse tried to comfort her, but Bryn felt irredeemably alone, isolated in an ocean of guilt and pain. She grabbed the nurse's hand with a feverish desperation, as if this were the last connection she could have with the world. "Please," Bryn's voice was a hoarse lament, loaded with regret. "Tell my parents that I'm very sorry. Ask them to forgive me, please. I'm so sorry. Sorry for having disobeyed, for everything." The tears continued to fall, salty and hot, while the darkness within Bryn deepened. She couldn't push away the image of her parents' faces, the fear and pain they must be feeling, the irreparable loss she had caused. The nurse, with her face taken by an expression of deep sadness, said nothing in response to Bryn's desperate request. She merely inclined her head, her watery eyes reflecting the cold and intense light of the hospital room. She held the young woman's hand with tenderness, the soft and warm touch a fragile attempt to offer comfort in a moment that seemed inescapably somber. Bryn squeezed the nurse's hand, her body calming as the strength of her emotions exhausted her. The monitor beside the bed emitted a long and continuous beep, a sound that seemed to echo throughout the hospital, marking the end of Bryn's life. Even though the doctor arrived quickly and tried to revive her, unfortunately it was too late. The injuries from the accident were too severe, and her body had lost too much blood to sustain life. The nurse, with tears running down her face, softly closed the eyes of the young woman, her heart heavy with the pain of the truth she carried. The doctor, who was attentively observing the nurse and the patient, asked a surprisingly intriguing question upon hearing the adolescent's last words. "Why didn't you tell her that you would attend to her request?" asked the doctor, his voice loaded with sincere curiosity but also with a soft incomprehension. The nurse sighed, a tear running down the corner of her eye as she moved away from Bryn's bed, her hand still trembling slightly. She took a moment before responding, the words seeming to weigh on her tongue. "I didn't know what to do," she said, her voice low and trembling. "I didn't know what to say. I wanted to spare this young woman from more pain, from a burden that would be unbearable for her to carry in her last moments." The doctor frowned, still trying to completely understand. The nurse, perceiving his confusion, took a deep breath before continuing, the words coming out slowly, loaded with a deep sadness. "The two people who died in the other car were her parents." Her voice faltered a little, the truth finally revealed. They had left home to look for her after discovering she was missing, trying to bring her back, to keep her safe. They must have somehow figured out where she might be heading. The doctor remained silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The nurse's words hung heavily in the air, a revelation that transformed the tragic accident into a cruel irony, a fate that bent over itself with an unbearable cruelty. The nurse looked at Bryn one last time, the young woman's face now at peace but still marked by the pain and guilt that consumed her. She felt a tightness in her own chest, a silent lament for a young life taken by recklessness and tragedy. "Calm, please don't leave this video. I know you must be deeply shaken and upset by the story you just heard. The feeling of injustice, of helplessness, is overwhelming, and I understand that. You became attached to the characters, felt their hopes, their fears, and were devastated by the tragedy. But the truth is that the story doesn't end here. I told it all this way because if I had summarized it, it wouldn't have had the same impact on you. Life is really like that. It surprises us, challenges us, and sometimes leads us to extreme and painful situations due to a single act of recklessness. It's understandable that you're disappointed with the story, perhaps even indignant, thinking that all stories should have happy endings. But real life, unfortunately, is not a fairy tale. We don't always have happy endings. Often, we have to deal with the consequences of our actions, learn from our mistakes, and move forward in the worst possible way. Now, what I have to share is even more surprising and revealing, so I ask that you continue with me and pay attention. Please avoid writing in the comments about the death of Bryn and her parents. Allow others to also experience the story completely, feel their emotions, and understand the depth of the message I wish to convey. Believe me, by the end of this, you will have understood me. Do you know why I know that Bryn's parents were in that fatal accident? I could tell you that it's simply because I lived in the town and that everyone found out about the story through the testimonies of those involved, newspapers and television. Ren, Bryn's best friend, was essential for us to understand how she ended up involved in the tragedy. But the truth is much more personal and painful. I am Kieran's grandmother. Yes, unfortunately, my beloved grandson lost his life in that tragic accident. For you, it may be a story of sadness and regret, but for me, it's a reality that I lived and that marked me forever. My daughter Sybil was young when she became pregnant, deceived by a man who never wanted to assume his role. He claimed the child wasn't his. Sybil was innocent when she was involved with him. He just wanted to take advantage. In fact, we found out later that he repeated this behavior with several girls, leaving other children around, children he never recognized. Sybil had to be very strong. She had my support and that of her father, Atticus. In the beginning, Atticus was very disappointed with his daughter for having fallen into the arms of this man, whose name isn't even worth mentioning here. It was a difficult period for all of us. He felt betrayed by his daughter's choice, but with time he understood that Sybil was also a victim. Despite everything, Atticus welcomed her with all the care and affection she needed. Together, we faced the difficulties and helped Sybil raise Kieran, who grew up strong and courageous, but was also young and reckless at times. He had an adventurous spirit, like many young people. From an early age, he showed that he wasn't a big fan of school. In the ninth grade, he wanted to drop out, but we convinced him to at least finish high school. After graduation, he decided not to continue to college, which was a shock for all of us, but he was determined to make his own way. He wanted to help at home and feel that he could contribute. At that time, this kind of thing was common. He began working at Inkasol Tattoo Studio and part-time at Reverie Coffee House. It wasn't easy work, but Kieran liked to feel useful and independent. With time, he saved a little money. He was proud each time he received his payment, even if it was a modest amount. And with effort, he managed to save enough to buy a used car. It wasn't anything sophisticated, but for him, it was a great achievement, a symbol of his independence. Kieran was a loving young man, always had a smile to give, and liked to help others. But like many young people, he ended up getting close to people who weren't the best influences. Some of his friends liked parties and drinks. They encouraged him to go out and enjoy life without worrying about the consequences. The consultations and therapeutic support became essential, and little by little, she began to rebuild her life, piece by piece, even if the puzzle would never be complete again. I also sought strength in small things, in moments of peace looking at the garden, in conversations with friends and family who understood the pain we were going through. You realize that everything that happened was the result of wrong choices. It's true. Our choices have a profound impact on our lives and on the lives of those around us. The story of Kieran and Bryn is a clear example of this. Each decision, each impulsive step contributed to the tragic outcome that we all witnessed. I don't want in any way for you to go through what I and my family went through. The pain is something I wouldn't wish on even my worst enemy. Losing someone we love is such a devastating experience that words can't completely express the suffering. You might imagine what it would be like to lose someone, might think it would be terrible, but the truth is that the reality of a loss is something completely different when it actually happens. The pain is indescribable. It's not just the physical absence of the person, but a tsunami of emotions that consumes everything around you. The world loses its colors, life loses its meaning, and the future seems a dark and uncertain path. We try to prepare ourselves for the possibility of losing someone, but we're never truly ready. There's no way to rehearse for the devastation that loss brings. You feel lost, disoriented, as if the ground had been pulled from under your feet. Only those who have gone through a loss can really understand the depth of this suffering. Life moves forward. The world continues to turn. But for those who have lost someone, nothing is the same anymore. Each day is a battle to find a new normal, to move forward without the person we love. So I implore you, reflect on your choices. Take care of those you love. Value each moment because the pain of a loss is a burden I don't wish on anyone. Life is precious and fragile, and we should do our best to protect it and live in a way that honors those we love. Our decisions don't affect just ourselves, but reverberate throughout a lifetime. Bryn's grandparents imagined their pain, losing not just one but 2 children and a young granddaughter full of life. It's a wound that never heals, a pain that accompanies each day. Think about the devastating impact that our choices can have, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. Don't live for tomorrow what can be done today. Life sometimes gives a second chance, but they could have simply been injured in the accident, recovered and moved forward with the lesson learned. However, there aren't always second chances in all moments. Learn from stories like this and be mindful of your choices. They affect not only you, but all those who love you. We have the power to decide our paths, the people we involve ourselves with, and the actions we take. But with this freedom comes immense responsibility. Each decision can have irreversible consequences, often more serious and lasting than we imagine. It's crucial to consider these potential repercussions before acting. The experience of losing someone is a hard and cruel lesson. And if I can make you understand the value of each life, the impact of each decision, then I will have done my part. Don't let recklessness or negligence lead you and your family down this path of pain. value life and the people around you, and make decisions that reflect the love and respect you feel for them. We can choose. Yes, we have the power to decide the paths we want to take, the people we want to involve ourselves with, and the actions we want to perform. But along with this freedom of choice comes an immense responsibility. Each choice carries consequences, and often these consequences can be more serious and lasting than we imagine. Youth, especially, has its own characteristics. Young people are full of energy, curiosity, and often a sense of invincibility. They want to explore the world, experience new emotions, live intensely, and this is natural. It's part of growing up and discovering who we are. However, this yearning to live intensely can lead to impulsive choices without considering the risks or long-term consequences. Kieran wanted to enjoy his freedom, feel the adrenaline of adventures. Bryn, equally young, wanted to explore the world, escape the restrictions of her home. Both were seeking something: excitement, freedom, acceptance, but ended up finding tragedy due to thoughtless decisions. As the last rays of sunlight streamed into the cold hospital room, the painful truth became clear, etched like a lesson that would never be forgotten. The lives of Bryn, Kieran, and the entire Mercer family ended in a single moment of carelessness, all stemming from one wrong decision. What seemed like small, impulsive choices carried irreversible consequences. The saddest part is that everyone in this story had good intentions. Bryn only wanted freedom, and her parents only wanted to protect their daughter. But in the end, a lack of foresight turned love into tragedy. This tragedy isn't just about a party or a reckless drive. It's about relationships shattered beyond repair. Our decisions don't exist in isolation. They ripple outward, affecting everyone around us in ways we can't always foresee. In those split-second choices between safety and risk, entire lives can be altered or lost. Every decision carries the weight of responsibility. Choose wisely. If this story has touched your heart or given you something to reflect on, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more life-changing lessons. And remember, your share could help someone out there avoid a mistake they may never recover from.